Hey, it's Don Skaggs again for Empowered Inventing, the one place where we try to help you help other people by taking your great innovation, the right opportunity, mixing that with sound wisdom to turn them into real things like products and businesses. Now today, I want to talk to you, tell you a little story about an inventor. And actually, I had never met this inventor, but I did meet this inventor's next door neighbor. This colleague of mine was telling me about her next door neighbor that she didn't even know was an inventor until later he was telling her about it. And it's really a sad story. This is an inventor that hid his prototype away. He was working on his invention. He was perfecting his prototype for 10 solid years. He had it hid away in his garage. His neighbor, next door neighbor, didn't even know he had this invention. He was hiding it away. He kept working on it and he kept working on it, and he let 10 years go by and it never took off. Now, why did it never take off? Well, it never took off because it never saw the light of day. Eventually, time, the technology, and the marketplace just completely passed him by. And unfortunately, he's not alone. I've seen a lot of inventors that this has happened to. And this is where they become a victim of what I call obsessive perfectionism. And that is where you want it to be perfect. You keep wanting to tinker with it. You're like the inventors and the product developers of a TV remote. And it's one of those TV remotes, maybe it's even bigger than this one. This is just kind of an example I've got. But it's a TV remote where they put 100 buttons on it. Now this one probably has, I don't know, 50 buttons, maybe it's less than that. But they put all of these buttons on this remote. They put all of these buttons on here, and let's say they put 100 buttons on it, when really all the customer wanted was to be able to turn it on, to be able to turn it off, to be able to change the channels and control the volume maybe. And they really didn't want it to do much beyond that. But no, they kept wanting to add, oh, but wait, we want to add this one more feature. Wait, we want to add this one more button. It's not perfect yet. And that's where that obsessive perfectionism comes into play. Now, unfortunately, I've seen this plague independent inventors and some of the highest paid engineers from some of the largest companies alike. Either type of person can become a victim of this. So, and this is where, again, you just say, well, no, wait a minute, I'm not ready to launch it yet. I just want to make one more improvement. I just want to make one more thing. I want to do one more thing with this. And so they just keep putting it off and kicking that can down the road. And now, sure. Now, let me stop a minute and say this. You want to get your MVP. And by the way, that doesn't just stand for most valuable player. It stands for minimum viable product. And a lot of times that's what we call our Frankentype. We talk about the Frankentype and the prototype in a lot of other videos and in our classes. Where you build that Frankentype, where you've snuck out to the graveyard of broken products and spare parts. You've used glue sticks and duct tape, and you have built a really ugly but yet very functional. You've proved it to yourself, no one else. You're still you've got it hid away in that garage, but you're doing it, and you're doing it very quickly, and you're doing one thing. You're getting one thing and then getting past it, and that is proving that it works. You're proving that to yourself. Then you build the demo type to prove that it works to other people. So, but this is where the remote, they put 100 buttons on here. No, we need to add one more button. We need 6 more months of design time to do this. Oh, we need 9 more months to add this feature on. Oh, we want to do this other thing over here. And what happens is it ends up costing way too much money, and it ends up costing way too much time. And this is what happens with a lot of independent inventors, where all of a sudden 10 years go by, 5 years go by, way too much time goes by, and technology and the opportunity passes you by. Why? Because you wouldn't put 100 buttons on here when your customer just wanted 3. So don't be a victim. Now, understanding why we do this type of thing really does help us not to do it. Helps us to understand it so we don't fall into becoming a victim of obsessive perfectionism. Now, sometimes it's a deep-seated fear of rejection, of criticism. It's like we've got this baby and we want this baby to be perfect, because if it's not perfect, somebody might say something bad about it. Well, guess what? When you get out there with your product, people are still going to say bad things. People are still going to say things that they don't like about it. But you want that. You want people to be able to talk and tell you what is wrong, what they don't like. You get that information in mass, and you got, you're talking to 100 people, and 80 of them are saying, no, we don't want that, but we want this. That's the valuable information you want. And you've got to get it out there, and you can't make it perfect. It is never going to be perfect in the customer's eyes. So you've got to get that baby out there. It's got to not be a baby anymore. It's got to be a product. So sometimes we just want that baby to be perfect, and we're afraid of that criticisms. Sometimes it's just easier to stay in the garage, and that's where this diligence thing goes in. It's hard to move on to that next step. We've got this whole system of idea steps we talk about, where you're doing all of these things in a certain sequential order. And the first things that you do aren't the things you normally think that you'd do first thing. Some people think they need to rush out and get a patent. They need to rush out and have a prototype built. They need to rush out and have so many products. But they need to spend a lot of money. And a lot of times you don't need to do that. There's a lean way to do that. But you're taking these steps. And sometimes, well, no, not sometimes, a lot of times, inventors and entrepreneurs and even startups will get stuck in one area of the process. They'll get stuck in, and a lot of times, if you're engineer oriented, if you're kind of, everybody's kind of got an area they lean to, an area that, oh, well, this is a good step. This is a step I like to do. This is a step I'm really good at. So it's their comfort zone. And they don't want to get, once they're in that comfort zone, oh no, I don't want to get out of that now. And you want to stay in that development stage sometimes. And that's where the guys with 100 buttons on the remote do. It's like, oh, this is comfortable. We're going to stay here and just keep adding buttons until we've added so many it's ridiculous. And sometimes it's just easier to do that. And we won't admit that to ourselves. We'll make up really, really good, valid sounding excuses for ourselves, because they don't want to take the next step, because the next step is hard. Sometimes the next step is something that you haven't mastered yet, but in order to master it, you've got to stick your foot in it. You've got to get started with it. You've got to take that step forward. So, but it's easier. It's that comfort zone we want to stay in, and a lot of times that's what ends up paralyzing us, especially in this prototyping stage, especially in this perfection stage. I've seen it with so many engineers. I've seen it with so many product developers. It is a really bad quicksand you can get stuck in. Don't let that happen. So if you understand it, though, if you can really see it and understand it for what it is, of, oh, I do need to take this next step. It's time just to, okay, we're done, and we need to move on to the next idea step. Another thing is you need to have a plan. In order to do this, you've got to have these steps. You've got to have a plan. And so you build that Frankentype, like I was talking about earlier. You've taken those just junkyard pieces and put them together. You've taken those components off the shelf and you've put them together. And maybe it's failed, and you go, well, I didn't realize it was going to do that. I didn't realize it wasn't going to do that. And you change it. But you're doing it cheap. These are cheap, but they're very fast iterations. This is not a decades-long process. This is a days-long process, or so many days, or maybe so many weeks. But do not let this roll into months and years. So you're getting that Frankentype, you've got it humming, now you're going to make a pretty one, you're going to build what's called the demo type. You're going to have the one that you've proved that it works for you with a Frankentype, and now you're going to prove to everyone else with a demo type. And then you stop. stop building at that point. You've built the Frankentype, you've built the demo type, it's time to quit prototyping and move on to that next step. And you've got to have a plan to do that. Say, okay, when I get here, and you're making yourself a promise, when I get here, I am going to stop and I am going to move over to these other steps, and I'm going to move through them as quickly as I possibly can, because you want to get to that part. You want to get to that step where you're able to take it in front of the marketplace. Maybe you filed your provisional patent. Maybe you've done a lean provisional patent that we talk about, and you are getting it out there in the marketplace, and you're getting that feedback, because you need to get to that, because that's going to tell you whether it's going to pass and fail. So you've got to get to that step as quickly as you possibly can. So lastly, make your invention process a quick process. And I kind of said this before, but you make it a quick process. Do not make this the decades-long process like the poor guy in his garage. If you're stuck, get help. There's lots of places to get help. EmpoweredInventing.com is one of those places. There's a lot of other places. Of course, your inventor groups. We have one, kyinventors.org. You don't have to be in Kentucky, because we do online meetings now. So, so that's a good resource. But another thing is, if you are getting stuck and it's just things are starting to slow up, and what's making it slow up is beyond your control, it's not you doing it, and you have to identify and understand, then you have to sometimes step back and look and say, of all the ideas that I have and all the ideas that I came up with since my first idea, because that happens to a lot of inventors and entrepreneurs, where's the lowest hanging fruit? Where is the quickest route to the marketplace? Where's the quickest route for me to actual revenues and income from this, of all these ideas? Because if you start with a big grandiose one first, and I'll see a lot of inventors do this, where they start with I've got this huge idea, I'm going to start with this one. They're magnum opus. And they start with that one, and they never get anywhere with any of them, because they're always stuck on that one because it was too big. The fruit was way up there, it was too high, they couldn't reach it, and instead of grabbing this other fruit that could get them a taller ladder to get to the higher fruit, they stay stuck on the real high fruit. So pick the lowest hanging fruit first. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for you. Don't fall into obsessive perfectionism. It is an inventor's Achilles heel. I've seen it hurt more inventors and entrepreneurs than a lot of other things can hurt you. So stay away from that. Understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I hope this was helpful for you. If you thought it was, like, subscribe, be sure and share this with other people you think it'll help. And I will look to see you at the next meeting, workshop, maybe one of our online classes, or on the next video.